In the last episode, we offered some thoughts about how to find a mentor, as well as introduced the mentoring model that many have been finding helpful over the years. But without a structure or some tangible actions to facilitate the relationship, my experience has been that many will not know where to start or how to keep the relationship on track. Today we'll discuss two more aspects of this model: the connection or one-on-one relationship and the cohort or the accountability group.
Welcome to Leadership Matters with Dr. Phil. His podcast discusses matters of leadership that really matter. Phil has had the privilege of mentoring leaders and coaching ministry teams around the world for several decades, and he's really looking forward to sharing with you some of the principles that have been so helpful for others. Leadership is about serving others, not power or position. Regardless of our context, family, job, ministry, or any circle of influence, we all have the potential to be this kind of leader. A foundational leadership skill that is often overlooked is mentoring intelligence. This series is based on the materials Phil has developed over a lifetime and taught in a variety of cultural contexts. To access all of our podcasts as well as our bonus leadership resources, just click the links in the description below or go to icmcanada.org/leadership matters or icmcanada.org/mentoring-intelligence. So now, let's join Phil as he discusses some leadership matters.
As we know, in all relationships, it's important to consider and discuss the expectations each person has for the relationship. For the mentoring relationship, it's no different. We need to discuss the following questions, which I have found helpful. Like how often will we meet? How will we handle confidential matters? How often will we evaluate the relationship? What particular areas are we wanting to grow in if you're the mentee, or what do we particularly feel we have to offer as a mentor? Some of these questions may seem rather obvious, but I found that they're very important to articulate in one of the first meetings together. For example, it's important to determine the degree of accountability desired by the mentee ahead of time. Also to determine how often we'll meet together. As we've mentioned, it's important to have regular times of reevaluating the relationship. To ask, how's it going? Are we achieving your goals? What do we need to change? And so on. This one-on-one relationship is focused, but at the same time, it should be informal. It should not be a lecture or even a formalized teaching time. It's a conversation around specific topics with a focus of life application. Last time we looked at the content of the guides, and I mentioned that I use the discussion questions to lead the conversation in the direction that the mentee wants and needs to grow. The same chapter can produce different emphasis depending on who the person is that I'm mentoring. It all depends on what they're going through. In determining how often and how long to meet, we need to be realistic. Meeting every day is likely unrealistic. Meeting once every 6 months, well, probably not enough. Our experience over the years has been that most people using our mentoring model meet once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks. The challenge is to keep the relationship fresh and not let it get stagnant. To do this, you can do related activities together or follow up issues that arise out of the meetings and out of the readings. But without some boundaries, the danger of these intense types of relationships is that they can spiral downward in an unhealthy relationship, creating an unhealthy relationship if we're not careful. From the mentor's perspective, it's important to remember that we're not the boss or resident expert. So I try not to give direct answers or advice. I'm not trying to create a following or yes men, someone dependent on me, like what happened in the shepherding movement we talked about previously. I want someone that I'm mentoring to become more dependent on Christ, not on me. I'm merely in their life for a time to serve them as they grow. Additionally, it's never justified to be overbearing and controlling and to overstep the permission a mentor has given me in their life. Maintaining this boundary preserves the principle of mutual respect and equality in the body. Lording authority and position over someone is never godly or particularly helpful in their growth. Fear and coercion can produce outward obedience or compliance for a time, of course, but never true spiritual growth that lasts. That requires being an example, laying down our own life and seeing this reproduced in others. So the agenda of the relationship should be driven by the needs of the mentoree. And as mentioned, periodic evaluation is essential in maintaining a healthy mentoring relationship. Over time, our life situation changes, and so the relationship will likely also need to change. We'll see in later episodes that all mentoring relationships go through phases. And so we have to be aware of that and change how we relate with each other as the dynamics of the relationships change over time. So every 3 months or so, I'll typically have a conversation that goes something like this. So how are things going? Are we addressing the issues that you wanted to address? Do we need to make changes in the frequency or duration of our meeting? And so on. What this does is provide the mentor the opportunity to address if the mentee is no longer growing for whatever reason. It might be a legitimate reason, due to a change in their life. The dog died, the house burned down, the wife just gave birth to triplets. That's all going to change your life a little bit. Or it could be they just lost their motivation or have reached their capacity for change at this point. Now that they see what it's going to take to be a leader, they may not want to pay the price for that change. Seeing a cross when you're thinking leadership is about a crown can be rather sobering and take some time to adjust to say the least. So if this latter situation is the case, then having such an intentional structure serves the purpose of focusing the relationship and the way forward, rather than aimlessly meeting and hoping things just get better. That is why I have these periodic evaluations, typically every 3 months, 3 chapters or so. As a mentor, I'm giving my best time to this person. And so at times I may have to say, hey, let's take a break for now and revisit getting together maybe in 6 months or so, or whatever time frame you think appropriate. What this does is free up my best time to spend with others that I'm mentoring, or freeing up some time to begin to mentor someone who actually wants to grow and move forward in their life. What it also accomplishes is not creating a situation where the person I'm mentoring feels like a failure. I do not want to further discourage them, but rather provide them with a breather to reconsider if they want to continue at a later date. Again, this is a specific type of relationship to help them grow in leadership. We want to create the conditions whereby we can conclude well in the relationship. Without specific evaluation, though, the relationship often will reach a plateau or it just fizzles out. This usually leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth and kind of cures us from ever wanting a relationship like that in the future again. So it's important to make changes if necessary and not leave things unsaid so the relationship just doesn't drift. In a future episode, we'll then discuss the stages of a mentoring relationship, and one of these options is the development of an ongoing peer relationship. And this is actually what happened in Karl's case. On the other side of the break, I'll continue by finishing my conversation with him.
Listeners of our Leadership Matters podcast have exclusive access to our free bonus leadership materials, which include our MQ assessments as well as his Developing Others workshop. Just click the link in the description or go to our website, icmcanada.org/mentoring-intelligence. If you would like to take a deeper dive into this topic, click on the link in the description box where you can download Phil's Mentoring Intelligence book and the workbook. In it, he discusses the key factors that affect our mentoring intelligence and then offers a practical mentoring model which leaders have been using for decades around the world. The Mentoring Through Intentional Relationship Guides are a practical model to actually help you mentor someone. They are available in several languages and over the years have been used by thousands of leaders. The content, discussion questions, and other tools are designed to assist you in mentoring a potential leader and are available at icmcanada.org/resources.
In episode 8, I introduced you to Karl, and we began a conversation. And he was one of the first guys, if you remember, who I mentored in the early 2000s at Berlin using this model. Let's now finish my discussion with him now. Karl, it's great talking to you again. And, we've been talking in this series about servant leadership and how that's such a foundation to a mentoring relationship. Like, if you believe in power structures, it's likely you're not going to mentor anybody, right? And because why would you want to help someone get beyond you? But, what have you seen about the servant leadership model and how that's impacted your mentoring relationships?
I think the first challenge has been to discover what God wants me to do. And then realizing part of that is fulfilling his call, but part of that is just serving others, and it's not about me. And finding other people that are open, that want to learn, that want to grow, and investing into them. And just seeing it's not about my own personal call, but investing into other people, and how God is going to use them, how God has seen them, and how I get to be a part of that journey and walk with them. Understanding it's not about having power in the local church or in ministry, but having an influence that impacts the generation I'm in, but also the next generation. Some of the people I mentor are peers, are people my own age. Sometimes they've been even a little bit older because of their life situations and how they grew up. And sometimes they're quite a bit younger than me, 10, 20 years younger. But it's realizing you get to invest into somebody, and they're going to serve others, and you get to be a part of that. And it's not about power. It's not about, this is what God has shown me, and now you need to do it so I can reach my goals.
Right. So it's more about them than your goals, really, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean,
or just creating yes men,
I had a mentor. I'm on the video call with him. He kept joking around saying, God loves you and I have a plan for your life, right? Because that's how so many people treat ministry. We talk about the love of God, but a lot of leaders, it's all about fulfilling their own calls and purposes, and not helping people mature and discover what God has for them.
If I can just jump in, how do you not feel threatened in that, right? Because a lot of leaders, to bring someone, we have the sense that if I open myself to others and I even share some of my failures, some of things that didn't go well or whatever, that they feel threatened in their own ministry that way, or that not respected or whatever. Like, how do you deal with that?
I've noticed transparency increases trust. Just opening myself in my own shortcomings or my own humanity, not necessarily confessing everything or just, having a low self. It's not about having low self-esteem, but just openly sharing what one is going through increases the trust and my own credibility. Like when I'm talking to them about something, they know I'm not just trying to fulfill my own purposes. I'm really interested in them walking through what God has for them.
How do you see it now as you're mentoring others? There may be similarities, differences between 25 years ago.
Well, looking at my church, we're a very intercultural church. So we have Germans, Ukrainians, Persians, Africans, people from India, from the Caribbean, from South America. I kind of focus on the common denominator, and that is people's desire for relationship, for authentic, transparent relationship, regardless if they're a boomer, regardless if they're a millennial, Generation Z, generation whatever. People want relationship. They want to be taken seriously. They want transparency, living leadership without masks, saying what leadership is really about, not trying to front, not trying to pretend, not trying to act successful, but just living life and letting them be a part of that life. I think that's what's also helped my leadership, or investing into others and servant leadership is living life with them, actually having them part of our life at our house, or when one is ministering and traveling somewhere, that I'll take them with me, so that they don't just see the stage persona, but that they also see normal life, right? Getting ready in prayer, getting ready, or maybe even being a little bit nervous before one gets behind the pulpit and say, let's pray together, because I'm really nervous about this sermon or about this church, and it's a different
Sure.
setting, and just sharing those moments with them.
Hey, listen, thanks. I know it's late there again. Thanks for taking the time for chat. I think maybe I owe you one, or maybe at least I can decrease the amount of lattes that you owe me. Maybe we'll do that for you doing this. And look forward to getting together in person next year when we meet for our CLI meetings.
Definitely. Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
So we've been discussing the content of the guide as well as this one-on-one relationship. Another facet of this mentoring model, though, is the cohort or small group meeting. This can help provide some external motivation and vary the input for the person being mentored. Typically these are held on the alternate week to the one-on-one sessions. Though the frequency of these meetings vary, from weekly to monthly, to be effective, they should be held regularly. Whenever I personally mentor several guys, say in one area at one time, I meet with them as a group on the alternate week to discuss the same issues, but in a group context. Mentorees usually find this helpful as they're able to then discuss with their peers some of the same issues being discussed one-on-one with the mentor. When we were living in Berlin, my wife also then met with a group of ladies she was mentoring. Meeting as a mixed group can be helpful to gain further insights, but of course there's some subjects that are best discussed in a group of the same gender. Another option is leaders in local churches meeting together, focus cohort, or perhaps groups of students in educational settings. Whatever the context, the goal is to make sure that it's not just a one-way dialogue or even a teaching session. The goal of the cohort is to facilitate discussion that leads to life application. The facilitator is more of a guide and does not need to be an expert. It can actually be a great learning experience for every participant to then take a turn to facilitate the discussion themselves. The materials also include lesson plans with questions as well as other resources. And the most important task of the facilitator, though, is to create a grace-filled atmosphere where participants feel free to learn from each other. In the last couple episodes, I've presented a model that we have developed to facilitate mentoring relationships based on servant leadership values. While there are many materials on the topic of mentoring, I have found far fewer that specifically help someone mentor another person. Whatever wineskin you use, though, I would encourage you to take the initiative and begin investing in others. It will take intentionality, yes, and a plan, but it's well worth the effort. Next time we want to look at the different stages of mentoring that occur over a lifetime. I don't think we ever outgrow or age out of the opportunities to be a mentor as well as being mentored. It's a job with built-in security. We are getting to the end of our series, but in the last few episodes there are some important matters that I'd like to share, and so I hope you'll be able to join us. But before then, I'd like to leave you a few leadership matters to consider. In your mentoring relationship, how do you implement the principles of clarifying expectations and having regular evaluation? Secondly, why do you think boundaries are important in a mentoring relationship? Does this mitigate power-based leadership? How does a foundation of servant leadership affect the principles of mentoring relationship as discussed here? And why is this important?
Thank you for listening to Leadership Matters. If this has been helpful, please remember to like, subscribe, and share us. Doing this will enable others to benefit from this material as well. If you would like to partner with us to provide these materials to leaders who cannot afford them, please go to icmcanada.org/donation.